Welcome to the webinar on Program Measurement, Maximizing the Impact of Your Program by the Society of Women Engineers. My name is Hannah Eichler-George, and I'm the Fund Development Manager at SWE-HQ. During this presentation, you can address questions via the question box, or after the presentation, you can send me an email at hannahgeorge@swe.org. This webinar is the second webinar in a three-part series that focuses on working with sections on increasing their capacity to build institutional fundraising techniques and skills. The first webinar focused on developing a case statement, identifying funders, and submitting funding proposals to those funders. This current webinar focuses on program measurement, and the final webinar focuses on funder cultivation. During this webinar, participants will learn key components and the value of developing SMART goals and objectives for their programs. Throughout the process, you'll see examples of what are and are not classified as SMART goals and objectives. You'll view some examples of SMART goals and logic models, and you'll develop some strategies to build consensus in your organization around the creation of SMART goals and objectives. Content from this webinar is specifically focused for any SWE organization, whether it be a section or affiliate or a member at large. This webinar is targeted for an introductory audience and will be especially useful for new SWE leaders that are taking on the responsibility of governance for their local SWE organization, whether it be a section or affiliate or a member at large committee. Let's begin by talking a little bit about why it's important to invest in program measurement. There's a few reasons why this is important and helpful for SWE organizations. First of all, it increases your organizational learning and the impact of your program. Through documenting your program measurement, your learnings and evaluation outcomes, you're able to build the institutional knowledge of your SWE organization to ensure that there is an embedded history of the work and successes and learnings that you have accomplished through your leadership. Establishing program measurement also helps funders understand the value of your program because you ensure that you're able to communicate with them in clear and concise terms. Program measurement also encourages regular planning and evaluation. It helps establish a framework for you to set goals for your program and ultimately helps you succeed at achieving your goals. Before we get in any further, let's define some key terms. First, a goal. A goal states the large-scale accomplishment that you want to make. Goals should always be measurable so that you can evaluate and report on your progress on a regular basis. Objectives are activities that you will accomplish in order to fulfill your goal. So objectives break down the individual tasks that you must complete in order to achieve your long-term goal. Outcomes are the impact that you want to make. They can be defined as short or long-term results that you intend to achieve through both your goals and your objectives. Generally speaking, outcomes describe the impact you want to make in the larger community. So what are SMART goals and objectives? SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, results-focused, and time-bound. Here are some examples of some SMART goals that are often used at SWE-HQ. One example is, SWE will develop emerging female leaders in engineering through its Collegiate Leadership Institute, or CLI, program held each year at an annual conference. This is specific. It calls out a specific program. It's measurable because it refers to a specific time that the program will take place and a specific target audience that's involved with the program. It's achievable because SWE has a history of developing this program and successfully implementing it. It's results-focused and that it focuses on developing emerging female leaders, and it's time-bound. It clearly states when this goal will be achieved. Similarly, SWE will increase exposure to engineering for girls in middle school with the Invent It, Build It program at annual conference. This is also a SMART goal because it's specific, measurable, achievable, results-focused, and time-bound. Let's take a look at some vague, unattainable, or unspecific goals. A vague goal might be, SWE will develop emerging leaders through its programming. Or an unattainable goal might be, SWE will develop all emerging leaders through its collegiate programming. An unmeasurable goal could be, SWE will impact K through 12 students, and an unspecific goal would be, SWE will develop leaders. In and of themselves, nothing is wrong with any of these statements. Some may be more ambitious than others, but ultimately they're coming from the right place. That's why developing SMART goals and logic models is so important for SWE organizations throughout the country and throughout the world, and ensures that you're taking a careful and critical look at the writing that you use to ensure that you're communicating your objectives in a clear and concise way that's meaningful to others. For example, SWE will develop emerging leaders through its programming. This is fine, but it doesn't explain what the programming is. An unattainable point of the second item mentioned is that there's no way that SWE can develop all emerging leaders through its collegiate programming, even if it might want to. There's no way to measure the impact SWE will have on K through 12 students unless it's tied to a specific program, intervention, or educational strategy. And citing that SWE will develop leaders is simply too broad and all-encompassing to narrow it down to a specific, achievable goal that SWE can work towards and measure. Moving on to some more concrete examples. Here's some examples of SMART objectives. For one, an attainable and measurable objective is, SWE will select and host 140 female engineering students to participate in the CLI from October 26 to 28, 2017 in Austin, Texas. This is specific. It allows the evaluator to measure it based on the number of students that attended, if the program took place, and if the program took place during the time that it was supposed to take place. It's results focused, and it has a specific time. Another specific objective is, SWE will recruit subject matter experts in leadership and engineering to provide professional development and training at the CLI. This is specific and results focused because it emphasizes very unique elements that must be achieved in order for the overarching goal of developing engineering leaders is achieved. Another example of a results-focused objective is, we will conduct pre-event and post-event surveys to gauge the impact of the program on participants and learn how to improve the program for the following year. This ties the success of the goal directly to learning from the evaluation processes that are built into the program through ensuring that SWE conducts post-event and pre-event surveys in addition to quantitative feedback that might be received while the programming is taking place. SWE can ensure that it has set in place the structures it needs in order to evaluate and learn from the program on an ongoing basis. This also ensures that SWE is able to receive feedback from program participants as it's conducting the program. Here are some examples of vague, unmeasurable, and unattainable objectives. For one, SWE will select and invite 1,400 female collegiate students to the CLI. While this is an excellent objective in thought, it's unattainable because SWE does not have the capacity to host this many collegiate students in an event that's targeted on developing leaders in a close, intimate, and highly structured environment. Another example is, SWE will recruit students to provide leadership and professional development training. This is not specific enough. It's too vague and general. It doesn't say what type of students, it doesn't say what type of leadership and professional development training, it doesn't say when the training will take place, and it doesn't focus on a specific result that might be achieved from the objective. Another unmeasurable objective is, SWE will inspire the next generation of engineers. Fundamentally, SWE always strives to accomplish this sentiment. However, it doesn't serve well as an objective because it's not SMART in that it's not specific, measurable, results-focused, or time-bound. So again, while many of the sentiments expressed within these objectives are not wrong in and of themselves, they don't yield themselves well to meaningful and easily communicated objectives that can be measured and communicated to funders. External partners or your other members within your SWE organization. So why use logic models? Logic models are often the visual presentation or the underlying structure, some might say in the engineering world, the flow chart for program measurement. There's a few reasons to use logic models. One, they're a strategic and productive planning tool. They're a trusted method in fostering success in program implementation. They're very well respected by program managers, funders, evaluators, and measuring the program's feasibility and long-term impact. And they're helpful in capturing the theory of change. We'll explain a little bit more about the theory and change in just a moment. A theory of change is the phrasing that represents what the logic model communicates. Ultimately, it goes over the entire process that you as a program manager and leader want to achieve through the work that you're doing. Ultimately, the most important thing that you can do, and we'll refer to this a little bit more explicitly later on during the planning section, is to ensure that any sort of program or objective that you're focused on is driven by your purpose and core mission of your program. So the theory of change is represented by logic models. Ultimately, it deals with a problem that you've identified or your organization has identified and a long-term solution that you hope to achieve. Logic models have a few different basic elements, and we'll go over a few templates of logic models for you to become a little bit more familiar with them. In addition, this webinar also has a SWE branded logic model that you can use as you're developing your own program management strategy with your section. Ultimately, you want to identify the inputs and resources and any challenges that you might identify as being obstacles in your way of doing your programming. These are important to define before you start setting goals, objectives, and long-term outcomes. You want to have a good understanding of your activities or the programs that you do on a regular basis that you hope fulfill your goals. You want to have some concrete outputs or outcomes, objectives that you're able to point to as items that you can put concrete efforts into in order to achieve your goals. And finally, the effects or the results and outcomes that you want to achieve because you as an organization have taken action in order to set objectives and goals that address the larger need that you've identified within your community and ultimately fulfills the mission of your program. Here's another example of a logic model. And here you can see how the idea of a logic model closely corresponding to a flow chart is connected to. Here you will have inputs, activities, short-term outcomes, and long-term outcomes. I generally work towards these sorts of logic models more than the ones in the previous slide because they're a little bit easier to communicate, especially to audiences that have never worked with logic models before. If you're someone who finds that they love to work on logic models, like I am, eventually you'll realize that there are infinitely complex versions of the logic models, and they can be very helpful in planning stages of your program. However, at the beginning stages of any sort of logic model development, you want to ensure that you're not getting too lost in the weeds. A logic model like this one that's available via the link that's posted under the image is a good starting point for any SWE section. To that end, I've attached a screenshot of the SWE logic model template that we've made for you. It has inputs, outputs, and outcomes, 3 specific categories with direction on each subcategory that you can evaluate and input data in once you've had a clear understanding of the goals and objectives that you want to set. So how do you start the process of creating SMART goals, creating logic models, setting up your SWE organization for success around program measurement? There's a 4-step process that we've developed that we framed in this 2-page startup guide that provides an initial framework for you to use in establishing a program measurement process within your SWE organization. First and foremost, as we've reiterated earlier, it's really important that any sort of work you do fulfills your mission. If you already have a clear mission statement for your SWE organization, section, or affiliate, you don't need to do a lot of work here, but you should keep your mission first and foremost in your mind when you're setting your goals and objectives. If you don't have a mission, consider meeting with your leadership team in order to define a mission for your SWE organization. An example of the mission statement of SWE is provided in the second box under step 1 of this screen. Once you've defined your mission and you ensure that this is first and foremost in your mind, you want to define your key assets. These will be the inputs that you use to fill out your logic model. There are the central resources that you as an organization can rely on and cultivate in order to fulfill your mission. So some examples of key assets are your members and volunteers, meeting locations, social media capability, web presence, the funders and committed partners that you have, any in-kind donations that you might have received or have the ability to receive, existing programs and curriculum. SWE-HQ, SWE-Next, and the Advanced Learning Center are always excellent assets and resources for you. And of course, and most importantly, with any SWE section, affiliate, or organization, the engineering knowledge of the membership that makes up this section is a tremendous asset that should always be utilized and highlighted in any sort of logic model or strategic planning process that you as an organization endeavor upon. Step 3, host an annual working session in order to set the goals and objectives for your SWE organization. Depending on the culture and the norms of your organization, you may want to host a brainstorming session with just your leadership or with your SWE section at large. If your SWE section is large and it would be hard to gather together the entire section around a productive conversation that might last 2 or 3 hours, you may want to focus first on only involving key stakeholders. Regardless, we always encourage you, when you're starting to talk about program goals and outcomes and objectives, to always involve the key stakeholders and the individuals within your section that are involved in implementing the programs that you are committed to on a regular basis. Ultimately, this program measurement process should not take an extensive period of time, especially once you've already defined your mission and you already have a good understanding of the assets that you as a section are bringing to the table. Once you've defined the group of people that you want to gather, you have a clear understanding of your assets and your mission, here are some helpful questions that you can use in brainstorming around this working session. So questions are, what have we done before and what are our existing programs? What programs give us energy and where do we want to invest our time? What are specific goals and objectives that build momentum off areas where we have energy and are directly aligned with our mission? This last one is really important. Frequently, with SWE organizations, especially for SWE sections that have been in existence for some time, if a program was started by individuals that are no longer present with the organization or involved in the section, it may be that those programs are being carried on just to ensure that tradition is honored. SWE leaders on a regular basis need to decide with their membership what makes the most strategic sense for them to invest their time in. Taking a step back and asking yourself where your energy lies and where you want to invest your time as a SWE section is a really important process in a program measurement system of creation for goals and objectives. This helps you identify areas that not only fulfill your mission, but also where there is a large enough amount of energy where you can involve a significant number of individuals from your organization in achieving the goals and objectives that you've set. Once you've answered these questions and you have a good idea of the central goals and outcomes that you want to see, you can sit down and write down the goals and a simple evaluation plan. I generally recommend 2 to 3 goals per program, and maybe anywhere between 3 to 5 objectives for each goal. So ultimately, we're not talking about a significant or lengthy document, really something that can be captured in maybe a page and a half. Remember that when you're writing your goals and evaluation plan, to keep your mission first and foremost and define it at the beginning of the document. Identify your key assets and identify your larger priorities and long-term outcome that you want to make. Using the SWE logic model template will be a helpful tool for you as you endeavor upon this process. Once you've had all of these puzzle pieces laying on the table, you can then start to write your SMART goals and objectives using some of the examples that we previously went over in the earlier slide. It's important to keep the written goals and objectives in a central place, especially if you're in a collegiate section where leadership changes year to year and may not always involve individuals that were intrinsically a part of creating your program measurement system. If you establish a pattern of doing this at the beginning of each year, you'll eventually build up a long-term institutional history around program measurement, developing SMART goals and objectives, and will be something that you as a section can learn from on a regular basis. Ultimately, this entire system is designed to focus on one outcome for you. That is to be able to fulfill your mission through learning about the success and challenges of your goals and objectives. To that end, create space in your calendar, whether it's once a quarter or once a year, to look at the goals and objectives that you and your leadership team developed and identify how successful you were in reaching those objectives. If you do this on a quarterly basis, it may be helpful to have one person responsible for tracking data and reporting it to your leadership team. Ultimately, from evaluating your work, you can learn from your recent endeavors and improve upon your programs. Here's an example of an annual program measurement cycle. First of all, you want to identify your mission and priorities. Set your goals and objectives. Develop your programs to ensure that your programs are directly in line with your goals and objectives, which should fulfill your mission and priorities. Through this process, you'll have SMART goals by which you can evaluate your work and then consistently seek to learn and improve from your past work in order to refine and update your mission and priorities. This should be a continuous cycle that sections who are looking to make a systemic impact within their community are committed to achieving. As a reminder, as we're closing up this webinar, the SWE research site is a great resource for individuals, especially as they're developing their case statement for their programs and identifying needs within their communities that they want to respond to. The information on this website is free and accessible for the general public and should be of particular interest to SWE members. A common question I receive when evaluating, when section members are starting to evaluate their program measurement needs is how they can be effective in ensuring that the leadership and their membership is invested in this process. Ensuring that you have investment within your key stakeholders is really important. And you can point to any of the rationale within this presentation in order to address these concerns. Ultimately, if you're receiving a lot of these types of questions, we encourage you to sit down with your SWE section and engage in a brief listening session where you can understand the different ideas, passions, interests, and engagement levels of your SWE organization. Once you understand that, that information can also help inform you as you define the priorities and goals of your section. Thank you for attending this webinar. If you have questions or concerns or would like additional information, feel free to reach me at hannah.george@SWE.org. There is one handout associated with this webinar, and we will be posting the recording of this webinar and all handouts from this webinar and the other 3 webinars in this series once the series is complete.